Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Usapang Pilosopo. What's up with teaching philosophy? The first of the Read Local Filipino Books for Filipino series of events by the Ateneo de Manila University Press, celebrating the all-Filipino online book. This afternoon, we'll be discussing the value of philosophy and of teaching it to the youth, especially in our current context of COVID and of online and distance learning. Our speakers for today are Professor Manuel Dy Jr., or Doc Manny for short, and Professor Agustin Martin Rodriguez, or simply Doc Gus. Doc Manny has been teaching philosophy at the Ateneo de Manila University for the past 32 years. He has also served the Loyola schools in several administrative functions, such as chairperson of the philosophy department, director of the Chinese Studies program, assistant dean for student affairs, and director of admissions and aid. He is a member of several local and international philosophical organizations. He has lectured in several universities and conferences. Doc Manny is editor and co-author of Mga Babasahin sa Pilosopo Moral, Phenomenological Papers, Contemporary Social Philosophy, and Values in Philippine Education and Culture. He is the founding president of the Ministry of Teaching Foundation and co-chairperson of the technical panel on philosophy of the CHED's Center for Excellence. Doc Gus is also a member of the Ateneo Philosophy Department. He is the author of May Laro ang Diskurso ng Katarungan and other works that explore the possibility of building a just society in the face of the inequalities founded on the marginalization of rationalities. He has written on democratization, good governance, poverty alleviation, social justice, and sustainable development using the frame of discourse theory, epistemology, and the philosophy of play and giveness. His works dialogue with sociology, political science, history, anthropology, poverty studies, economics, and ecology. And I'm Jackie Tolentino, also a member of the philosophy department, and actually a former student for speakers, and I'll be your moderator for today. Our discussion this afternoon will flow as follows. We'll begin with a relatively unstructured and informal discussion about teaching philosophy with the speakers for about 20 minutes. And then I will do my best to briefly synthesize the discussion. And lastly, we'll open the floor to questions from our audience. So feel free to send in your questions to the comments box. We'll do our best to address them in the Q&A portion. And I just see here now that Doc Manny has corrected me. Not 32 years, but 53 years of teaching. That's amazing. All right, so I guess we can begin with our discussion. Doc Manny, I can't seem to see the others in my screen. Oh, there you are. There's everyone. Hello, good afternoon, Doc Gus, Doc Manny. Welcome to Usapang Pilosopo. I think you guys are on mute. Hello.
That's the thing of
How
the.
are you?
We're all doing well.
Mhm.
Still on lockdown.
Yes, socially, we are still on lockdown, unfortunately. Should we just start? Yes?
Yes.
Just begin with the discussion? Are we good? All right. So I guess we can start with a situationer of sorts about teaching philosophy or on teaching philosophy now. So what is the state of teaching philosophy in the Philippines, especially given how everything has shifted online, and especially given the context of the pandemic, where inequalities, not just in terms of education, but in so many other areas, have been revealed. What do you have to say about the state of philosophy today?
You want to start, Manny?
Oh, okay. Sige. I would describe it in two words: growing and challenging. Okay? Why growing? Because with the K to 12 law approved, we have introduced philosophy in the senior years, grade 11 to 12, introduction to the philosophy of the human person, and also edukasyon sa pagpakatao, okay, which is really based on the philosophy of the human person also. And then you have the new law that is being implemented now. The implementing rules are being drafted. The new law is the good manners and right conduct, which will be given in primary schools. but the edukasyon sa pagpakatao will be retained in the past high school. So we will have two very important education uh, curriculum that has philosophy in it. Okay, the edukasyon sa pagpakatao and also the good manners and right conduct. Now I say challenging because teaching philosophy online is really very challenging because you don't have the face-to-face class anymore, and so you have to attend to every student's uh, situation. Okay, and that is very very challenging. And also most of us are not used to teaching online. Okay, so that's my short answer.
Yeah,
Gas, ikaw
for
naman.
me, I
Yes. How about you,
think
Doc?
I agree. I totally agree with Manny. Because before the pandemic, wow, philosophy talaga was parang entering a new phase in its history where it could reach so many people, um, because it was going to be offered in senior high, right? And then it was also going to be retained in some form in the college level, which is really great kasi, for me at least, okay, the reason why I went to philosophy was because I really saw it as important for forming people, not just forming them so that they could act well or they could behave properly as citizens, things like that, but because it was an opportunity for people to think about what it means to be a human being, how to exist in a way that is more than just simply living every day, but living in a more meaningful way, things like that. And um, not many people have an opportunity to do that. And usually for students, it really happens when they enter a classroom that is philosophical, even if it's not philo, right? Because my first encounter naman with philosophy was through literature. Eh. So, parang, just to have an opportunity like that to think about what it means to be human, why you exist, why people suffer, why people make other people suffer, yung ganyan. So, for me, the fact that they're bringing it down to high school is so exciting, because it's a chance really to share, to give high school kids, especially senior high kids, that's the time when you really begin asking their serious questions, eh, diba? It's a good time for that. Sad lang kasi nga we had the pandemic, of course. Um, and so that should be taking off already, but the question is na nga, can it be done online, especially because so many of the students are already really having a hard time and grappling with how do I learn online, ang hirap na nga ng math and science field pa yung ganyan, di ba? But I'm thinking, it's really important na even if it's difficult, even if it's going to be more challenging, that the teachers who are teaching philosophy in whatever form should still do it, and do it in its most authentic way. And what do I mean by that? I mean, kasi 'di ba, sometimes when we teach philosophy, we tend to get lost in the technical. What did Plato say, and what did Aristotle say, and how was he answered by this guy, and how did Kant say this and ganyan. But I think, more authentic philosophical teaching and thinking is really, um, when it's used to guide students to and human beings to reflect on their lived life. And parang ngayon na pandemic, ang hirap magturo ng technical, di ba? That's a blessing actually, I think, because it's a chance for philo teachers to really, parang maghumugot sila sa pagkatao nila, parang ganyan. Parang to dig deep into their questions, their real questions, especially because I think more than ever, the students need hope. They need to see that all of this is meaningful, that all of this can be good, and there's a possibility of wholeness and becoming more human, even if we're facing all these challenges of the pandemic and all the suffering and the death. Parang philosophy can help them see the hope there. But yun na nga, if so I think the pandemic and online teaching is giving us a chance to be honest and to not force ourselves to do technical philosophy, but actually engage our students in genuine thinking. So there, that's where I think we're at.
So, Manny, you want to add something?
Wala na. Tama si Gas. Kasi talagang sa panahon ngayon, hindi ka talaga pwedeng magkunwari na marunong ka. Kasi, hindi ba?
Lahat tayo.
Oo, kailangan talaga magpakatotoo tayo lahat at saka hindi mawala ng pag-asa, di ba? Yun ang importante.
My experience like teaching online, sorry, but yeah, just to share, like, my experience teaching online, kasi one of the things that I was teaching, actually two of the classes I was teaching online, medyo technical eh. One was on Filipino philosophy and the other one was philosophy of religion, which can be really technical. But then I just realized, mahirap maging technical yata. So what I did was really just, ask the real questions. Why are they asking this? Ba't ba mahalaga to? Ganyan. And then I saw the students really responded because they really were looking for, the foundations of hope. Bakit pa kailangan umasa? But posible pa bang umasa? Like, and if you think with them, they're so responsive. Nagulat ako.
As someone who's been on study leave for the last 2 years, I haven't been teaching philosophy for so long, for 2 years now. And then nangyari pa yung pandemic, so I'm missing out on this shift to online learning, to this, which is both good and bad because it's a challenge. I can see that it's a challenge, but also kind of bad because I think I'm missing out on a big shift in how philosophy is being done. But to jump off what Toka said, because it's really interesting that one of the things that we kind of have to adjust a little bit is how to get the technical aspects of philosophy across. What happens in the rigor? I understand that we have to think along with our students and encourage hope and also flesh out their feelings of hope. But what happens to the rigor and discipline of philosophy? What has online learning done to that, I suppose? Has it affected the way you've done philosophy in a more practical level? And again, I'm asking this because I haven't been teaching for 2 years, which feels like an eternity. So I would really love to hear your thoughts on the matter.
Yun isang challenge. Yun nga isang challenge yan sa online teaching. Kasi yung technical, galing rin yan sa sa karanasan natin no? Yung mga konsepto, yung mga technical terms na ginagamit natin sa filosofiya, galing rin naman sa karanasan yan ng mga dating pilosopo, hindi ba? And so, ang challenge natin dyan, ang hamon natin dyan ay kung pwede nating ibaba yung mga technical na maging makahulugan sa buhay nila. Di ba? Yun ang challenge ngayon.
Yeah, I guess that's what the rigor is to be able to really look at experience and think of it deeply, philosophically. Parang to learn, because I think where Manny and I are coming from is we're teaching, di ba, core curriculum philosophy, di ba, Manny?
Yes.
So when you teach that, what you're really trying to teach your students is how to think philosophically. So these days, I think the rigor really comes in trying to help them to see, to look. Okay. But the thing is also, I think so this doesn't apply, I think, to everyone. But I think I had the good fortune in this year. So I taught 3 semesters in 3 semesters, intersession, first and second semester. And then, so I think I had the good fortune to have good students. Kasi the rigor naman is what I learned from online learning and teaching is that the rigor can still be kept if you teach them to work together. So a lot of it is really cooperative learning. So I think the style really, Although sawang-sawa na talaga mga students sa group work. And ako personally, I hate group work kasi I don't like dealing with people. Pero, but then it's kind of hard ba to group work. And sabi nga ng mga students ko, sir, personally, sinusuka ko na yung mga group ko. Ganyan. Pero, and I'm like, yeah, I understand, right? Pero, it works for Philo eh. Parang if they help each other grapple with the text, it's really, really helpful. So nagulat ako mismo kasi parang it's the first time I'm really learning what student-centered learning is. So sorry Ateneo, after 30 years, na-gets ko na yung student-centered learning. Ganun pala yun. That when you guide them and then you help them to grapple with it together. Pero together, kailangan talaga yung together with each other. And it really helps. So the rigor is there.
So from that, what do you think the students can pick up from philosophy now? Because I'm also thinking of it in terms of how the pandemic has kind of reduced everything to essentials, right? Essential work, essential movement. And in many ways, people might say that philosophy is not essential. Of course, I don't believe that, but many people might argue that, especially students who are very overloaded, doing so many things online already. How would what kind of value would philosophy bring to the youth, to young students? What's the importance, in other words, of learning philosophy in this context now, where everything has to be essential?
I'll attempt to answer that in two narratives. Okay. When I was awarded the 2004 Metrobank Outstanding Teacher, John Nery wrote in his column, and he mentioned how he got into philosophy. He was in Ateneo High School, graduating student, and I was one of the recruiters from the college to recruit them to major in philosophy. No? And he remembered that I did not bring any notes. No, I just had a placard, and then I showed to the students two words: values, critical thinking. And that's how he went into philosophy, because I presented these two words: values and critical thinking. Now, the other story is happened, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago, before the pandemic. I was in a seminar, TUP seminar, on the state of Filipino philosophy. Okay? And so I gave my remarks there, and then the late brother Romy Abulad, Altico, okay. And then during the open forum, one guy grabbed the microphone. He was the first to ask a question, but it was not a question. He narrated that he was just passing by TUP, and then he saw my name. And since there was no seminar fee, he just went into the seminar and listened to the talks, no? And then he said, I was just going to apply for the College of Law, and then he saw my name, and so he got in, because he wanted to share something with me, and that is that he read my book, Philosophy of Man Selected Readings, and his favorite, he was very much influenced by the chapter on yes, a phenomenology of love, you know. And at that time that he was reading the chapter, A Phenomenology of Love, he was experiencing depression. And because of that article, he overcame his depression. So he just wanted to share that to the audience. He was not asking any question. So for me, therefore, the value of philosophy is essentially values and critical thinking. No? Values and critical thinking. And it helps also psychologically with the student that, upon reading the chapter, he overcame his depression. And yeah, I have a story also to tell that, every time I go to different countries, different regions, and then I see my book being used by students, I always ask them, oh, ano bang favorite chapter mo dyan? And the answer is usually a phenomenology of love. Tapos, yung second best nila, yung article ni late Ramon Reyes, Man and Historical Action. And which is a very relevant article, no? So, yung nga, philosophy is essential because it teaches us values, critical thinking, and most of all, maybe, I would I would say, it teaches us also to put love in action. Yun lang.
Alam mo, Doc, I still remember also a phenomenology of love. Doc was my 101, 102 student, so I still remember. How about you, Doc Gus? How about
everyone loves love. Yeah. Yeah, but that's a really important question. And it's really, actually, it's so interesting because what else is, di ba, tayo na nga, we're the ones who ask the most essential questions. Parang when everything's become like, when it's always a question of essentials, oh, we're really supposed to be there kasi, di ba, that's all we do naman, we ask questions. Okay, all we do is ask questions, but we ask the essential questions, right? So it's really important. And kasi especially now, I think, because this pandemic has really been, actually, economists already refer to it, well, some economists, but of course on the more activist reforming side, have already referred to it as the Great Reset. And I really think that's true because, of course, it's not going to happen. But it gave us the chance. This is the moment in human history, one of the few moments in human history when we can see face to face our folly. Parang ganyan eh. Kasi kunyari, nung the Roman Empire was falling, I don't think they were aware of it, or when the Aztec civilization collapsed, it wasn't like somebody was there saying, okay, kung di tayo magbago, magko-collapse tong civilization na to, kaya magbago kayo, ganyan. No, I don't think anyone was there really because they didn't have that global vision. Today we do, right? And for years, for decades, people have been warning us about global warming, about pandemics, diba? About all kinds of potential disasters to our economies, to our way of producing and consuming and all of that, right? And this pandemic is just like, for me, the way I understand this pandemic is it's like the soft opening to our future eh. Parang hindi pa to full-blown lahat ng problema, pero parang patikim lang, parang ganyan. Wala pa lahat ng waiter, wala pa lahat ng specials, pero parang ganito yung mangyayari. So it's really great. I mean, it's not great, but it's really great na parang we were made aware na, hey, wait a minute, these things can happen. And it could really be a terrible thing, but now that we're aware of it in not such a horrible way, we can actually think about it and prepare and maybe change things. Kaya lang, the thing about it is, if no one is asking, why did we get here? Not how, it's not like, how did we get here? What kind of production systems do we have ba? Or what kind of energy systems do we have ba? But the why. Why did we get here? What is it about us being humans that led us to this situation? What is it about us that drives us to destroy our own planet, to exploit people so terribly, yung ganyan? So, in this moment of the Great Reset, or maybe the Great Soft Opening to our future, which is what I talk about in that book. But it invites us to actually think about like, ano po ba, what is it really that led us here? And who asks that question, diba? But philosophers, right? And then as philo teachers, we're the ones who bring down these very complicated questions and answers that they came up with to them. So I think it's essential. And the others are just as an addendum to that. And the other essential thing, again, is love and hope, I think. Those are what our students are really looking for now. And I see that even in my students, na parang they're looking for a way to look at this situation with a sense of, yeah, it's difficult, but it's a difficulty that's necessary, that will lead to potentially a very good thing if we could actually harness that goodness. But yun na nga, I think philosophy sana is giving us also the capacity to model to our students how we can look at reality with love and hope there. And that I think they're looking for that. That's essential.
All right. Thank you for that. Because it's true. I mean, these discussions of love and hope, where else can they talk about that? Where else can students really talk about what it means to have hope and what it means to love another person and what it means to be responsible for others, not just oneself, but the world even live our lives really that. But before we move through the comments box, we'll be wrapping up the discussion proper in a bit. But in connection to what you're just discussing about love, hope, about rethinking how we're doing things, about critical thinking, as Doc Manny talked about, really the role of critical thinking, that rethinking of how we do things. Um, how do we get that across to students? I mean, meaning, how do we do so in a way that's engaging? How do we? Because it's one thing to say, oh, we have to change our ways, or we have to love. Um, how do we get the students to really connect with that? I suppose how to teach that properly and to get them engaged with these notions of love and hope and rethinking, really critical thinking.
Ewan ko, para sa akin,
Go ahead.
ah, ang isang paraan diyan ay ang pagtuturo ng filosofiya sa Pilipino. Okay. Kasi kung nagtuturo ka sa sarili mong wika, mas tumatama eh, mas tumatama. Pangalawang mungkahi ko diyan ay yung pagtuturo na hindi imposing, no? Hindi imposing, hindi ka nagpapataw. No, ito yung mo, itong ideya na ito, ganoon. Kailangan ang gagamitin na estilo ay yung dialogical. Yung para bang nag-uusap kayo. Of course, challenging talaga yan sa online teaching kasi hindi mo kaharap yung kausap yung mga estudyante mo, di ba? Pero nga, tinuro nga tayo sa Canvas na ang mga teachers ay coaches, no? Tapos, ang mga estudyante ay companions, di ba? So, yun. Ang importante sa companionship, sa coaching, ay dialogical style of teaching. Hindi pwede yung, okay, parang this is the correct answer, ganon. Hindi ka nagpataw, hindi itong dapat tingnan mo. Kailangan hayaan mo ang mga estudyante na may palabas din ang kanilang sariling pag-iisip, di ba? At doon ang pag-uusap na mangyari. And importante dito ngayon sa online teaching ay bigyan ang mga mag-aaral ng panahon na magbasa. Kasi kung hindi ka nagbabasa, wala ring mangyari diyan sa pagtuturo mo kung hindi mo bigyan ang mga mag-aaral ng panahon na magbasa. So that's very important, to give time to students to read, no? To read and read.
For me, I agree totally with Manny. It's like, if you can connect with them from where especially from where they're coming from, di ba yun naman parang
Yeah.
ang lalim ng pinag-usapan mo, ang esoteric minsan nga, yung mga tanong ng mga pilosopo, hindi nila nakikita bilang tanong nila, right? They're like, why do I have to understand this imperative or, these things? But if you can communicate with students, from where they're at, kaya I think it's really important in a sense if a teacher has a sense of what his students are thinking about, where they're coming from, ganyan. I guess I'm still lucky kasi when I have two children who are spaced far enough apart na when I talk to them, medyo I'm still connected to the generations, di ba? So my 15-year-old son now these days keeps me connected more or less to this generation, and my daughter before was the one who kept me connected to their generation. So I know what they're thinking about, and then I also try to imagine nung kaedad nila ako, ano yung mga tinatanong ko rin, ganyan, ano yung mga mahalagang tanong sa akin, right? Pero this year nga na it's all online, and may share ako na kadiri, pero nandidiri ako sa sarili ko. Pero parang spontaneously ang nangyari. Nung online, parang I don't know, it's weird, pero parang when I was talking to students, weird, on the computer, I'm sure may mga sasabi dito yung mga philosophers sa technology and communication. Pero parang mas nag-connect ako sa kanila. There seemed to be a certain intimacy in the online setting, or baka naghahanap lang talaga ako ng kausap. Anyway, so parang nagkaroon ng intimacy. Tapos, tuloy, dahil doon, ang dami kong nabahagi sa kanila, kasi teaching philosophy of religion and hope, ang dami kong nabahagi sa kanila about my own life and my own struggles with hope and, darkness na di ko ginagawa dati kasi mandidira ko sa sarili ko. Pero parang it seemed natural, diba? So it came out. And then it happened. And this is the weird thing, kasi I had a class, hindi ko naman sila pinipilit kasi I knew it was the last sem and everyone was really struggling na talaga. And hindi ko sila pinipilit, pero talagang they won't go on camera. Wala talaga akong kausap. As in, kausap ko lahat, avatar or letter or, whatever comes out when their cameras are off. Pero ako hindi, sige lang. Alam kong nandyan sila, ganyan. So I just talked and shared like that. And then at the end of the SEM, or sometimes, kasi kinakamusta ko sila on the platform. I just ask, like I send questions to them and ask them, how are you? Like, is anyone having difficulties? I'm not hearing from you guys, yung ganyan. And then, ang daming nag-feedback na, Doc, even if we're not there on camera, we're really listening to you. And then they're sharing things like it really matters to us, ganyan. I think, in these times lang, I'm not sure if normal times it's still important. But I think also in these times, it matters to them that you show your vulnerability rin. Yeah. Well, not necessarily vulnerability, pero mapakita mo, hindi, may dinaanan rin ako. Tapos alam nyo, mula dun nabuo rin ako yung ganyan. And it really matters to them for adults yata to have shown them na, hey, we went through your struggles and here we are, parang ganyan. Or even we're still going through these struggles and, and we're still philosophizing about it in hope. Parang ganon. So that really mattered yata. And then, yung napansin ko rin pala, sorry, one last thing, is that, it matters to them. Kasi, anyway, the platform we use, diba? I don't know if we're allowed to say it, Mga plugging kasi. Pero,
thank you so much for these insights. Again, for someone who hasn't been teaching, it's very refreshing to hear. And also encouraging. Yeah. But go ahead, yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but no, one last thing I wanted to share. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, the one last thing I want to share is like, it mattered to them that kasi in the thing we use, in the platform we use, you can write, pero it looks like you're writing to them directly, but actually it's a mass letter. But then they feel that you're writing to them. It's an illusion. But syempre you care naman and you want to get for them to write you back. So I was able to write a few letters, parang nung nagbagyo, sige, and then I shared with them, like, or I asked them, and then how they are, and then I tried to share with them, like, this is how we could look at it, ganyan, and how we could understand the situation, or how we could try to process the experience, iba mans, parang ganon So, and then sumusulat sila I mean, they respond to it and yun. And it was very for them, I think it was meaningful na kinakamusta ko sila. Even if it's not, really directly, they felt it mattered. So I think that's part of, part of this crisis teaching is kindness. So show your students kindness and they will want to learn from you. Parang ganun. It's a trick. Wait, para my students, if you're there, sincere yun
Oh.
ha. Anyway, go. Sorry.
Oh, sincere naman, of course. Siyempre, we mean that. Okay, I'll just quickly put together what we've been discussing so far, and then open the floor to questions again to the audience to the audience members. If you have any questions or comments, please send them in. We'll try to address them. I suppose the first thing that I'd like to bring out is the connectedness that is still there in philosophy, even if we're all in lockdown, even if we're all isolated from one another, and how philosophy allows that relation, that kind of connectedness, connection between students and teachers, and even students between students, which I think is very important. That's one of the things that came out in. Now, it's clear that we have to go back to the experience of the students, and they're able to. They have a time and space, in other words, in philosophy, to share their experiences and kind of recognize who shared their experiences, even if we're all apart from one another. And philosophy, with its critical thinking and its questions, can allow us to see that, to see the connection among all of us, really, that ties all of us. And it also gives us a moment to think and rethink our situation right now, because it's not great, right? COVID is proof that we have been doing things wrong, I think, and that we really need to do things differently. So it allows us, our philosophy classes allow us to rethink the way we've been doing things. With that, I'll turn to the questions that we have. Our first one actually comes from Kiana Feliciano. Again, I'll just read this out, Doc Gus, Doc Manny. It's up to you who among you would like to what do you call this, answer this first. So, good afternoon. Thanks for the cuento, Doc D. Specifically about the reader who overcame depression after reading Phenomenology of Love. Philosophy was one of my best parts of choosing Ateneo, and agree that it's essential in life. How can we continue to live our learnings in philosophy post-student life? So I assume Miss Kiana is already a graduate. So how do we continue doing philosophy after Ateneo, after college?
Okay. Maybe I can answer the question with uh, with the recent experience I have with online teaching. Uh, I was teaching the first quarter or the first semester, the human condition, the phenomenological track, and of course, the required reading was my book, Philosophy of Man Selected Readings. But since it is online, the university press offered to sell the book in e-version, no? For only 100 pesos. Okay. So during the first Zoom session we had, I told them about the availability of the textbook in e-version. And then one of my students emailed me that she does not want the e-version. She wants the hard version, the book version. And she said that it is available in Shopee. And she would prefer the book version because then she wants to have the book for life. She wants to have the book for life. That means she was saying to me that no, philosophy does not end in college after you graduate. No, it continues even after college. And I remember a story by Eddie Boy Calasans, that he had this student, of course, go through the course before it was philosophy of the human person, and then years later, the student came back to him and told him that he almost died. No, and when he was dying, he remembered all of a sudden all the lessons about death that they took up in philosophy in college. You know, sometimes when you're in college, you just, okay, you assimilate all these ideas, but it is when you experience, dying, that you remembered all the insights that you learn in college, you know. So, learning philosophy does not end when you graduate. It continues even after you graduate. And I think that's the lesson I got from the student who wanted the book version rather than the e-version. That's my answer to the question.
Right. Yeah,
Thanks,
so
Doc Manny.
Kiana,
How about you, Doc Gus?
yeah, that's a really good question. Because a lot of students have asked me, like, how do you, can I read stuff post, post philo and things like that. First of all, I think if you really love some of the things you learn, you got, some of the essays you got from college, you should read them. Because like me, I keep going back to some of them up to now, even if I'm a teacher, and then some of them I don't have to deal with anymore because I'm using other stuff. It's nice to go back to. And then there's another way, Ren, of doing that. I mean, this is for reading, ha, like what Manny said, kasi baka some students really, one of the ways to keep it alive is to just keep reading philosophy, diba? And there are some philosophy classics that are really readable to non-technical people. I mean, non-professional people, right? And kasi naman, di ba, when you're done now with school, you don't want to get into the technical stuff anymore. No one's gonna quiz you anyway. So baka you wanna look into things like Plato's dialogues, ganyan, because that's something you can read, and no one's gonna test you if you don't understand it. And but even if you're just reading it for yourself, it will enrich you, even if you don't get into the technicalities of it. But the other thing really is art. The other things, whatever arts you're into, if you're into theater, if you're into film, if you're into novels, ganyan, because some of the greatest ones, not the corny lovey-dovey ones lang, yung mga ganyan. Pero yung mga may mga may malalalim na tanong talaga, ganyan. Especially these days in Philippine film, there's a lot of stuff coming out with deeper questions. Even the seemingly commercial ones, they ask deep questions. Like nagulat ako when I watch Fangirl. Like, whoa, I didn't think this would turn out to be that way. Diba? But if you watch films, it really makes you ask deeper questions in life. And then what you learned in philo kicks in. Right? Parang it's an opportunity to exercise philosophizing. So I'd say keep up with literature or art or film or whatever, because that helps you get deeper into it. Because you know what? My path to philosophy really was film. Film and literature. Actually, I didn't naman think I wanted to be a philosophy major before. But because of like reading things like Hemingway or watching the films of Lino Broca, those are the things that raised questions that I went into philosophy to try to understand. So after you got na the basics of thinking critically or philosophically, you can go back, you can use those things to exercise that. It's like a muscle.
Ako, I have something to add. Just a little bit, which is to talk to young children. I have a 5-year-old and he asks the most difficult question that kind of forces you to do philosophy. Like one time we were just telling him, oh, why don't you just wait and kill some time? Wait for around 5 minutes, just kill some time. And then he asked, what if I actually kill time? Questions like that. And then you're wondering, oh my God, and I'm not prepared for this. I'm a philo teacher, but I'm also not prepared to answer all of these questions. So talking to young children and to the youth really can also help with doing philosophy outside of the classroom setting, outside of philo classes. Next question. Okay, so we have another one from Von Katindoy, who's actually our colleague in the philosophy department. Are there plans to help SH teachers, I assume SH is senior high, use your Doing Philosophy book for senior high? If yes, may you share the details here? Nako, Doc Gus, do you have any plans? Because ako, out of the teaching
I,
circuit. So are there any plans
I didn't
with
even know
our,
that people
since
were
I
using
co-authored the
it.
book with Doc Gus.
But that's
Yeah.
your book,
Well, if
Jackie.
there, I know it's
Jackie,
our
that's your book.
Kamani Gus.
Yeah.
That's true. If they
We didn't
want
even know it was
help from us,
being used
we'll
actually.
gladly help. I wasn't even sure.
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware. I mean, I knew that our former students like getting it because, like, going back to Kiana's question, how they can continue doing. I know a lot of our former students got it because they kind of just want to remember their philo classes with the book. But I'm
Yeah.
glad that it's potentially something that is of use in senior high. If they need help, I suppose you can just get in touch with us
Yeah.
with how to teach it. So Vaughn, just email us or
Right.
something. Okay. We have a comment here from Nell Azarcon. Hi, Prof. Manny. This is for Doc Manny. I'm a student in your business ethics class. Oh, just a comment. Looking forward to reading your book and to be able to read that chapter that most students like. Yes, that's the phenomenology of love. That's really fun to read. Uh, okay, another question from Rands. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Rands A. Tuyo. Can you give top philosophy books that influence your thinking? Okay, so book recommendations. So Doc Gus already mentioned the classics, but perhaps apart from the classics, apart from, hold on, where are my props? Apart from Repentance and Rebirth and also Philosophy of Man, apart from these books and doing philosophy, what would you suggest? What would you recommend for these students to influence their thinking?
Okay. The first philosophy book that I read was Kierkegaard's The Sickness Unto Death.
Oh my goodness, Doc.
And really, yeah, I was at that time. I was experiencing that crisis of faith, and that book really, helped me a lot. Okay, Kierkegaard's The Sickness Unto Death, and then the other book, of course, that really influenced me to go into Chinese philosophy is, of course, the Analects of Confucius. Okay, and Tao Te Ching of Lao Tzu. Okay, and the Chuang Tzu's way of Chuang Tzu. So these are the top philosophy books that really influenced my thinking. Okay.
Docas, you're on mute. Docas, you're on mute.
Yeah, I have pala, sorry. Yeah, but I have pala syempre there are books that influence my thinking that I wouldn't recommend to other people. Kasi baka ma-crazy kayo. Like, kunwari, Derrida's Aporia, ganyan. I don't want anyone else to read that. Kawawa naman kayo na. Pero, but I would like, there are a lot, but the ones I'd like to mention now, maybe not even books, but authors, para if you want to look for yourself, and then you're not a specialist, I would say, look at the books nga of Kierkegaard. Lalo na yung Fear and Trembling at saka Sickness Unto Death yun. At saka, if you can find any of the books of Joseph Pieper. Kasi si Joseph Pieper, hindi naman siya major philosopher, minor philosopher lang siya. Pero feeling ko major minor philosopher siya. Kasi he's very inspiring to read. And even if you're not a specialist, di ba, man? And then
Yeah.
Manny's right. I would like, for me, my favorite of the Chinese nga are Lao Tzu and and
Chuang Tzu.
Dao De Jing. Yeah, Chuang Tzu, yeah, the Dao De Jing. Talaga. And of course, I got those from Dr. Manny. And Doc Manny's other book that really influenced, ito naman personally influenced my thinking that I think anyone can read is Gandhi on Nonviolence by Thomas Merton. Dati pinapabasa yun ni Doc Manny sa amin sa Indian Philo eh. And I think it's one of the best Philo books because Thomas Merton gathers Gandhi's thinking in little aphorisms. And it's very easy to understand. So yeah, I'd recommend those. Oh, and of course, sorry, ano pala,
In connection
Pambungad
with,
sa
oh,
Metaphysica.
go ahead.
Sorry, and Pambungad sa Metaphysica, di ba?
Yes, thank you for saying that, Doc Gus. Yeah. I was about to suggest that because so we have another question from Miss Evangeline Din Carrion asking, do we have philosophy books written in Filipino? And I was about to say right away, Father Friols, all of the books of Father Friols. But also,
Yeah,
Doc Gus has books written in Filipino. Doc Manny has books written in Filipino. So
yeah.
I would suggest checking out the University Press, AUP, because these books are, as far as I know, available there.
Magpakatao is out of print.
I have a question here. Another one. Oh, go ahead. Oh, yes. I think there's some books of Father Frios that are out of print. We have one more question about online teaching from Serge Gabriel. I hope I'm saying that properly, Serge. Hi, Doc Gus, Doc Manny. Ay, Doc Jackie. Hindi pa po ako Doc. If you're okay sharing, what were oral exams online like? Oh, that's true. That's a very good question. Paano nga pala yung oral exams? Were your students all right? And are you teachers okay also? It's hearing teacher. Oh, sorry. I guess he means I've been hearing teachers share stories. Oh, it's hearing teachers share their stories that I miss the most about philo class. So
Yeah.
he misses his philo classes because of the stories of teachers, but he also wants to know how oral exams were like.
You,
Oh,
Manny, I
okay.
didn't have
Yeah.
orals.
I'm not requiring orals this for teaching online because the requirement now, if you're having orals, you must have at least 3 persons. No, you must have at least 3 persons, and I never like group orals. I never like group orals, and so I opted for a synthesis paper in lieu of the final oral exams for teaching online. But if we go back to on-site teaching, of course, I'll go back to oral exams, but I will see to it that I have a third person with me. And usually, it's my teaching assistant with me conducting the orals.
I
Ako, I
suppose
just
one way
happened to
also
share.
to do it is, I go ahead.
Ah, yeah, sorry.
Gus.
No, I just wanted to say na I didn't try and conduct oral exams kasi what I wanted to get from them was a synthesizing in output, sorry. And so I asked them to do some kind of podcast, and that was good. For me, it was good because it showed me their creativity and insight without being corny. Sabi ko bawal maging corny. Sorry,
I
sorry
was about
Jackie, go
to say
ahead.
something like that, podcast. Baka pwedeng kind of an output na oral pa rin yung presentation. That's one way to do it. We have a question here from Miss Karina Velasco. Thinking should be taught from kinder and not just in senior high. Agree. Should that not be an urgent philosophy project? Show teachers or textbook writers exactly how to do this? So I suppose what are your thoughts on how to teach philosophy to children? I know there are more technical ways of doing that, for sure. And I think we have colleagues who are focusing precisely on that philosophy for children, like Doc Enyang, Romy
Yes,
Palacios, as far as I know, maybe even Lovelyn Paklebar, I think. So, but what are
yes.
your thoughts on the matter, po? Doc Annie, Doc Gus?
I'm glad you shared that, Jackie. That we have teachers who are into teaching philosophy to children. And as I mentioned at the beginning, with the new law of good manners and right conduct, the implementing rules are still being drafted. And I'm actually being asked as a consultant for this implementing rules. But because of the difficulty of online meetings, so it has not progressed very much. Although the deaf ed people are really very busy uh, crafting the implementing rules for good manners and right conduct. And as I mentioned, good manners and right conduct will be taught in primary schools, not in high school, but in primary schools. And so you will really need good teachers to teach that subject, and teachers who will not only teach good manners and right conduct, but why. No, in other words, critical thinking would also be involved in teaching the subject. So to the answer to the question, yes, critical teaching should also be taught in primary schools, not only in high school or senior high school.
Oh, you're on mute again, Gus.
Yeah.
Admit,
No,
mute.
sorry. I have to answer Karina's question kasi syempre she's the boss, di ba? But, you know, just to say this, okay, I'm the deep person that I am today. That's joke lang. Pero I think what really formed me to be a critical and reflective thinker since my was because I was exposed to great literature when I was young. And by great literature, and I'm talking about preschool. When by great literature, I mean Hans Christian Andersen and Oscar Wilde and all those stories that I know. And I think really, so yeah, okay. So the answer is we have specialists who are studying this and doing this. But if I were gonna do this, I would really, I really think that preschool children can be taught critical thinking, but not just critical thinking, but deep reflective thinking. And I think the path to it is literature, because and this is something maybe student that kids today don't have too much of, but like the kinds of fairy tales na hindi yung mga pa-cute Disney ganyan, pero yung mga may totoong tanong, like the original Little Mermaid or yung Selfish Giant, diba? These questions really are the ones most able to form young minds, to ask the questions, diba? To ask the questions, which is the most important thing, I think. So, if Karina really is challenging us to do this, I'm sure Jackie and Roy and I could embark on another book.
Game. Okay, we have time for just one last question. Then we'll have to wrap things up. This is from Angela Perez. Hello. Very nice to see and hear from my former teachers. Asking from the perspective of a Philo grad student, should we start thinking of these insights and concerns on teaching philosophy as early as graduate school? Wait, excited. Since teaching might be our telos. Any thoughts or tricks? So should they start thinking about what it means to teach philo as early as grad school? So just perhaps just short answers from our speakers.
Yeah, Angelo.
Doc Manny might be
I
on
sorry.
you.
Is Manny talking?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead, Gus. Go ahead.
Okay. Sige. So Angelo, I'm just saying na yeah, if you really you should, if you really think that you wanna teach, but you better think hard, Angelo. It's a no. You really have to be. You really have to love it to be. But if you really want to do it, I think the thing that the best exercise to think of really now is how to translate the most technical ideas into something, into terms that your students can appreciate and understand why it's important, but at the same time not simplify it. That's, I think. Oh wait, although can I answer lang one question from Hannah? Sorry, because Hannah's asking. She wants now to give people my book, my laro, but that's really difficult, Hannah. I think that's baka they won't think it's a gift. They won't be happy. so, if it's a real question, that if there's a lighter material that you can give people, and thank you very much if you do. But this book nga Repentance and Rebirth, it's easier to understand. It's a lot easier to understand, I think. Medyo that I think that's what they wanted it to be too. Anyway, that's it.
Okay. Any last quick remarks from our speakers before we wrap up? I suppose any last few things to say, Doc Gus, Doc Manny, or are we good?
Wala naman akong siguro, nga, why teach philosophy? Well, sa akin naman it's I would consider it my mission, no? And so I think it's everyone's mission also to ask philosophical questions, no? And philosophical questions are not the same questions that you ask in science, di ba? Because science always have a direct answer, no? But philosophical questions are questions that have to do with the totality, with the wholeness of life, okay, or an experience, no? And that's why it's never ending. It's continually asking for answers to our life, to our way of living, to our way of loving, to our way of hoping. Yun lang.
Ako, if there are
Thanks, Doc
any,
Manny.
sorry,
Ha?
yeah, ako
Yeah.
naman, if there are any people, if there are any teachers out there, I want to talk to you. But just as a the last words to teachers out there. I don't know if there's anyone actually out there who's a teacher that's listening. Or I think so nga, parang Ladka was saying that she's using our book ba or something. Yeah. But if there are teachers out there, I think right now, while we're still in this pandemic, the students really need to be formed philosophically, for sure. But philosophically and seeing the deeper questions in life, to ask the deeper questions in life and to understand how they can do that without it necessarily being too difficult or technical or but just real, because these days all their thinking is really coming from YouTube and TikTok. And parang they need to be encouraged to think. Pero I don't think they'll be encouraged. The only thing that will encourage them to want to do what you're doing is kindness and genuine care. I think that's really the key here in these pandemic times, especially and syempre, even if not in these pandemic times, but I think most especially in these pandemic times, we really need to show them that we care and that we can show kindness and we can model in our own way being human, not perfect humans, but to model the struggle to be a good person to them. I think that's what they want to see because they really need to see a way out of this pandemic with hope. And the only way to do it is just to be loving and caring and hopeful to them. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Doc Manny and Doc Gus, for your time and your insights. Thank you to everyone who sent in their comments and their questions and for taking part in this first series or first in the series, Usapang Filosofo. The books Repentance and Rebirth at the End of Life as We Know It by Doc Gus, Philosophy of Man by Doc Manny, and Doing Philosophy, An Introduction to the Philosophy of the Human Person, co-authored by yours truly, are bundled together and available at Aklatan sa Shopee at 30% off. Grab your copies today at shopee.ph/Ateneo Press. Promo is valid today until June 21 only. There are more free online talks in the Read Local series organized by the Ateneo University Press. This Aklatan. Check out the lineup of events by visiting their social media pages via Ateneo Press on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you again to everyone. Thank you, Doc Manny, Doc Gus, and to AUP, of course. Thank you. And please keep safe and well. Bye.
Bye-bye.